Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. Today, we'll continue to highlight the Republican presidential candidates and their performance at the Family Leadership Summit. President Trump and Wall Street investors are also paying close attention to what these candidates have to say. Wall Street has chosen to invest in a few of Trump's rivals in the race, namely Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. So who will President Trump choose as his vice presidential candidate? On the international scene, the Crimean bridge was bombed once again. This time, Ukraine is not dodging and denying that they did it. Okay, let's get into it. The last three candidates that Tucker Carlson interviewed on the first 2024 Republican presidential primary forum are relatively young compared to the other presidential hopefuls, and they all have something to show for it as well. Let's start with the interview with Nikki Haley. After listening to the whole interview with Nikki Haley, my impression is that she's very articulate and knows exactly what the audience likes to hear, so she was able to capture most people's attention. On the other hand, Tucker Carlson was strangely easy on her without challenging her. At the end of the interview, I remember two topics from their conversation. The first topic was about who might have left the cocaine that was found in the White House. She refuted the White House spokesperson's claim that it was left behind by tourists. She also refuted the Secret Service's claim that there are no surveillance cameras in that corner.
I've been to that area. It is the most secure area anywhere because this is where I, on the National Security Council, with other members of national security, met with the president. You discussed the most secure things. I know the area where the locker is. People don't just go in and out of there. It is either the president, the vice president, cabinet members, or deputy directors. Nobody else is going in there. There is some staff, but it's immediate to, I couldn't take any staff but my deputy. The president would take his chief of staff, very limited. So for them to say they don't know who this was, don't tell me there's no cameras in there. There are absolutely cameras in there. So I will tell you, I strongly believe this is a cover-up for either Hunter or someone very close to the president, and they don't want to say who it is. But the problem I have is now your answer is, oh, this isn't a big deal because, by the way, there was marijuana twice last year. Why didn't you do anything about that? Like, who has time to go into the national security skiff, open the locker, and put drugs inside? Like, that's a bigger problem because if you've got somebody doing cocaine deciding on national security, that's what I'm worried about.
Well, and it shows, I would say.
I totally agree.
The other part that left an impression on me was when she explained why she was running for office.
Someone asked me why I was running, and I said, you know, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of opportunities. I want them to know that country again. My husband is deployed. I want him and his military brothers and sisters to know their sacrifice matters, that we do love our country. My daughter, I'm doing this for her because she and her husband just got married and I saw how hard it was for them to buy a home. And my son is a senior in college and I've watched him write papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not us. That's not America. We deserve better. 78% of Americans right now don't think their kids are going to live as good of a life as we did. We can't be okay with that. I'm not okay with that. We've got a country to save.
In fact, it's not fair to say that Tucker Carlson didn't ask any challenging questions. Tucker's first question was very challenging.
Historic numbers for the current president, 81 million votes, 15 million more than Barack Obama, twice the population of New York City more than Barack Obama. What do you think of that?
In terms of Biden?
Yeah, 81 million votes. They are saying that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. And my question is, do you accept that? And second, how do you think he did that?
I mean, all I care about is changing that. Like, we can't afford a President Kamala Harris. I will say that over and over.
Amen.
And we have to do everything we can to make sure that that happens.
But as a mechanical question, it's not a trick question, it's just like the mechanics of it, something you're thinking about since you're running. I don't think anyone would say Joe Biden was a great candidate.
No.
Didn't campaign.
He didn't campaign at all.
He was not a figure who commanded respect among Democrats. They made fun of him. I'm not attacking the guy, but that's true.
Right.
Nobody in Washington said, I want my kid to grow up to be Joe Biden. And yet, at the end, he's got 81 million votes. 15 million more than Barack Obama, who, whatever you think of him, was a very talented politician, and I think smart. So, like, how did he do that? And what can we learn from that?
Well,
But Nikki Haley didn't answer Tucker's question directly. The first time she rolled her eyes as a response and the audience laughed. After Tucker followed up with another question, Nikki Haley turned the conversation to the need for voter ID, which of course is one of the policies that needs to be enforced, but that didn't answer the first part of Tucker's question. How did Biden do that? Kerry Lake was one of the live commentators for the event. She was not happy with Nikki Haley's answer. Kerry Lake gave her own answer. She talked about what really happened during the 2020 election. But to be on the safe side, we're gonna play Kerry Lake's answer on our membership site only. After yesterday's show, YouTube continued to tag our channel saying that we were in violation of copyright issues. The videos that YouTube pointed to as being in violation of copyright issues were not the longest ones, nor were they the ones that we did not attribute a source to. They were the videos that were about sensitive topics like the 2020 election. We also had to delete the parts about Tucker's secret and Mike Pence's going over the edge. In order to ensure that today's video will run smoothly, we've put some of the clips that might trigger YouTube's sensitive nerves on our membership channel. Nikki Haley was followed by tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, who is a young man and he was definitely the star of the show. He is a natural-born leader, he is sharp, insightful, courageous, and he is an executive. His speech can get people's blood pumping. I'm sure Tucker and the organizers were also infected by his enthusiasm, so they together interviewed Vivek for the longest time, for about 40 minutes. The challenge I now face is to pick the best minutes out of his 40-minute interview. His answers to every question were fantastic. Okay, let's start with foreign policy. So, should we send reserve personnel to Europe?
Well, since you are a younger person and spend time with them, we saw yesterday that a group of reservists has been called up to Europe, apparently, to prepare for war with Russia. Of people in the age cohort who might plausibly be called up to do that, what's the response?
I think there is no basis for us to send our young men and women, our sons and daughters, people my age or any age, to go defend somebody else's border halfway around the world when we should be using our own military to secure our own border in this country. And I will not apologize for that. We have to put the interests of this country first.
This was the most straightforward and unobtrusive answer that was given by the candidates present that day. And he thought that the Ukraine war might evolve into a Vietnam War or an Iraq war. So we have to end this war.
But on this issue, nearly our entire field is indistinguishable in practice from where Biden is on this, which is in an undefined, ill-defined way pouring more money into a war that I think is destined to become Vietnam or Iraq all over again. And if you don't learn from the lessons of the past, you're going to be making the same mistakes on an even larger scale going forward. We have to end this war. We can end this war and start prioritizing the interests of actual U.S. citizens here at home.
So I think, judging by the response you just got, I think a chunk of, I don't know what percentage, but a lot of Republican primary voters agree with you. Not all, but a lot. I don't think any Republican donors agree with you.
I think that's accurate. And I've lost, to be really honest with you, I've lost many large donors or prospective donors over this issue. And it puzzles me.
So what is the biggest threat that we face right now? Is it the Chinese Communist Party or is it Russia? Vivek has some deeper thoughts on this question.
And the thing that puzzles me, Tucker, is nobody in either party is talking about this right now. The Russia-China alliance is the single greatest threat that the U.S. actually faces today. And we are pushing Russia closer into China's arms by actually continuing to arm Ukraine. So what I've said is that I would negotiate a deal that ends the Ukraine war, frees the current lines of control. Yes, that means giving part of the Donbas region to Russia. I would make a hard commitment that NATO never admits Ukraine to NATO. And those seem like unspeakable words in certainly the Republican donor class. But we get something greater in return, which is that Putin, in that case, would have to exit his military partnership with China and remove nuclear weapons from Kaliningrad, which border Poland, and get the Russian military out of Cuba and Venezuela and the West. And this is a deal that Putin should do because he ends up winning. He gets things that he doesn't have today. But it secures American interests, too. And I do think in a weird way, it does take an outsider to get that job done. Because if you want someone to fix a problem, you don't turn over the keys to somebody who actually broke the thing in the first place. If you want to fix it, maybe have somebody who didn't break it in the first place. And that's part of why I'm in this race as an outsider.
This view of his is so politically incorrect that almost no one dares to speak of it, although it may occur to a number of people privately. And what does he think about the January 6th incident? His answer was profound and honest.
I'll be very honest with you. You want to know what caused January 6th? There's such a temptation to say that there's one man whose name is unspeakable. We can't.
No, first of all, it's
put it on the foot
QAnon.
of.
It's QAnon.
It's QAnon. You want to know what caused January 6th? Is pervasive censorship in this country in the lead up to January 6th. You tell people in this country they cannot speak, that is when they scream. You tell people they cannot scream, that is when they tear things down.
His full answer was about 2 minutes long, but the rest of his answer I can only put on our membership site. His summary of the issue was very excellent. The audience rewarded his honesty and boldness with a round of applause.
That's what caused January 6th, is a cycle of censorship in this country. And until we look ourselves in the mirror and admit truth on that, we will not move forward as a country. And I think that's the real cause. And we're not, and I'm sorry to say this, Tucker, but I think until we reckon with that reality, I worry that that is the beginning of, it's a friendly parley compared to what's to come, unless we step up and speak truth, restore integrity, and actually lead us to who we are as a people, rather than sweeping the truth under the rug.
So does Vivek Ramaswamy remind you of anyone? He kind of reminds me a little bit of President Trump. He also said that his favorite president of the 20th century was Ronald Reagan, and his ideas stem from Coolidge. Both President Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy are successful entrepreneurs, and they both have no political affiliation. President Trump was never involved in politics before he ran in 2016. Both of them have a patriotic passion. They know what to do, and they know how to make it happen. And most importantly, in the face of strong opposition, they won't back down. They choose to face it head on. And that's why people call Vivek the Millennium Trump. Vivek believes that the current divide in American society is not between Democrats and Republicans, but between pro and anti-Americans. But pro-Americans are in the majority, so he firmly believes that conservative and traditional values will win the day.
So it was interesting to me that the traditional partisan boundaries as drawn are really sort of retrofitted. We're sort of shoehorning an old structure, we're sort of shoehorn the modern truth into sort of an antiquated view, where I don't think the dividing line in our country is between Republicans and Democrats right now. I think it is between those of us who are pro-American, who believe in the ideals of this country, who will not apologize for those ideals, who will stand up and sacrifice for those ideals, and those of us who are, and it exists in this country, I mean, the Vice President's a great embodiment of this, anti-American. Those who wish to apologize for a nation founded on our ideals. But if you divide it up that way, it is not 50-50 anymore. It's not even close. It's easily 80-20 in our favor, and half the 20 are people younger than me who never learned what those ideals were in the first place. We're going to bring them along too. And I think we have an opportunity to do in this country in 2024 what Ronald Reagan did in 1980. Deliver a landslide election, call the bluff on the division. Much of it is artificial. I fell for it, right? Even when I started this campaign, I'm running for a Republican candidate for U.S. president, I don't even talk about Republicans that much anymore. I try not to use the word. Not because it's a bad word, but because it doesn't mean anything. Right, if half the Republican, 3/4 of the Republican Party's got the same policy as Biden on the most important policy matter of our time, and if much of the Democratic Party, or at least people on the south side of Chicago, believe in using the military on the southern border and putting the interests of Americans first, I'm not sure those labels are doing much for us now.
From a kid from a normal family to a self-made millionaire, the far left has attacked Vivek's success as a result of his white supremacy. Vivek admits that he has privileges and that he wants all children to have the privileges that he has.
Man, woman doesn't matter. My parents came to this country with almost no money. I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. And then people tell me, oh, that's because you had privilege. They tell me white privilege. It's sort of weird. It's sort of an interesting, it's kind of interesting, actually.
Do you tell them?
As I take the blindfold off, and now you have your answer. But the interesting answer is, actually what I do tell him, Tucker, is that I did have privilege. I didn't grow up in money, but I had two parents in the house, a mother and a father, with a focus on education and a faith in God. And you know what? That is the ultimate privilege. That if I'm going to enjoy that, every kid in this country ought to enjoy it too.
Vivek says that he doesn't see a specific person or party as his opponent. He's running for his own beliefs and for American values.
My gut instinct is that I will be the nominee and in a position to win this in a landslide versus Biden. And they will not let Biden run against me. So I believe that if I am the nominee, they will not let Biden run. It is why they're holding in the back pocket the documents case against Biden. It is why they're holding in the back pocket everything else that you're wondering why they're not charging or bringing now. It's not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's a managerial class, deep state bureaucratic class versus elected official puppets thing. And so they're not going to have to use that if it's Trump, because they think based on, they don't analyze, they analogize. They say we did it. We can debate that, but we appear to have done it. We appear to have done it, and so we'll do it again. So if it's Trump, they're going to run Biden. If it's me, there's no way they let Biden run. It's going to be a new puppet, Gavin Newsom, Michelle Obama, you name it. It doesn't matter to me, though, because for me, whoever it is, I'm not running against anybody in this primary field. And I'm going to keep that philosophy in the general. I'm not running against whichever puppet they put up, Biden or somebody else. I'm running for our vision of what it means to be a citizen of this nation, the United States of America. I'm leading us to something, and nobody else is going to get in the way.
Thank you. Vivek, good to see you.
Good to see you, Tucker.
Vivek won a standing ovation and support from the entire audience. He was the only candidate in the day's summit to receive such approval. After stepping down from the stage, host Glenn Beck asked him if it really takes experience to be in politics, and Vivek argued that having no political experience is actually an advantage. And I'm sure you're going to like his answer. He plans to dismantle most of the government, including the FBI, if he wins the election. According to his plan, this is feasible and constitutional.
You said today that on stage that you don't have a lot of experience, you don't have any experience running governments, et cetera, et cetera. Is that really necessary in today's world to have the experience? Is it honestly that different than running the world's largest corporation and reining it in and getting it right?
I think it is. I think the fact that it is different is a good thing. Because I think that one of the things that happens when you actually go through this totem pole and ladder of government is that you become acclimated to its ways. So I'm coming in with a clear-sighted view, Glenn, of shutting down most of the administrative state.
How realistic is that?
Very realistic. So first of all, do it on strong legal authority. So I'm a unique combination. I don't like to brag a lot, but I'm a CEO, but I've also studied the Constitution deeply. And the Supreme Court right now shares my view of the Constitution. The U.S. president already has statutory authority. The Presidential Reorganization Act of 1977 says you can shut down redundant agencies. Well, when I look at what the DEA does and what the U.S. Marshals do, there's my legal justification for shutting down the FBI without asking Congress for permission or forgiveness.
Jeez.
Tucker, there's another justification, stimulating the economy, also in that same statute. The $80 billion spent in the U.S. Department of Education, you know what? That would stimulate the economy to give it back to the people. That's my legal justification. So I understand the legal footing. By the way, what stopped Trump? The civil service protections, they said.
Correct.
Well, guess what? Read the law. Civil service protections protect against the individual firings of employees for supposedly political reasons. They do not apply to mass layoffs. And mass layoffs are absolutely what I'm bringing to Washington, D.C.
Would you lay it off, reform it, or close it down, these institutions?
Many agencies, I would just shut down the agencies. There's a certain list of other agencies where we have 75% headcount reduction plans.
Jeez.
And then there are other agencies which we move out of Washington, D.C., make people move. Many of them will volunteer not to. We save on the severance costs.
Vivek's grand performance put tremendous pressure on the last man standing, who was Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Yeah, how can you outshine someone if he's a flaming ball of fire? A lot of the points that Ron DeSantis made and the policies that he would like to implement may sound similar to President Trump's, but we do know that he has rejected the possibility of becoming a running mate of President Trump. The audience applauded as DeSantis described how he's trying to eliminate Chinese communist infiltration.
The top threat to this country is China. It's China's ambitions, it's China's industrial capacity, it's the CCP's ability to pollute our culture, impact our universities. Incidentally, in Florida, we got rid of the Confucius Institutes that they put in universities. We cracked down on them being able to do research dollars to our universities, and we banned any purchase of land by the CCP in the state of Florida.
So it's not all that surprising that Vivek Ramaswamy's approval rating went up after this debate. President Trump did not participate in this debate, but he's obviously keeping an eye on the performance of the candidates and the electors. After the summit, President Trump said that his running mate is likely one of those candidates. President Trump revealed on Sunday that his pick for vice president or cabinet member could be one of his primary opponents when he wins the White House in 2024. He suggested that Vivek Ramaswamy or Senator Tim Scott could be his running mate. President Trump told Maria Bartiromo, "I think Vivek has done a very good job, frankly. I think some others have done a good job." You have some good people on stage, actually. I think you have some very talented people. I've been impressed by some of them. Some of them I'm very friendly with, actually. He added, without specifying, that I think you have potential cabinet members, too. On Monday, a pre-dawn explosion occurred at the Crimean Bridge. The Crimean Bridge connects Russia and Crimea. Images show a section of the bridge's roadway cracked and sloped to one side, bending the metal parapets. Russian officials say that Ukraine was behind the terrorist attack on the bridge, and the Ukrainian side is also implying that they were responsible. The Ukrainian State Security Service, the SBU, made an unspecified post on Telegram. They said, "Nightingale, my dear brother, the bridge has gone to sleep again." The Crimean Bridge was also damaged by an explosion last October. Ukraine denied it at the time, but a few months later, Ukraine indirectly admitted the attack. This time, Ukraine directly implied that they did it. Perhaps they think that no matter what they do, their Western allies will support them. The bridge explosion occurred on the same day that Russian President Vladimir Putin had to decide whether or not to extend the Black Sea Grain Initiative. A few hours later, Russia officially withdrew from the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which is a humanitarian corridor that carries Ukraine's staple grains to global markets. The initiative is suspended, but the Kremlin said that the suspension of the U.S. and Turkey-brokered Black Sea Grain Initiative had nothing to do with the bridge attack. Putin said last week that he was considering suspending Russia's participation because the Russian part of the deal had not been finalized. Russia will return to the deal once the conditions are met. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember that every like, comment, and share helps more people to see the truth. We've heard from some of our audience that they don't get notifications of our videos anymore from YouTube. So please follow us on Telegram, Gab, Getter, True Social, Twitter, and on Ganjing World for the latest updates. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family because everybody deserves to know the truth. Again, thank you for watching Front Page, and we will see you next time.